The champagne flute shattered against the bulkhead of the Gulfstream G650, spraying golden foam across the cream leather seats like arterial blood. My Uncle Richard's face twisted into a mask of feigned surprise, his eyes gleaming with that predatory amusement I'd come to recognize as his true nature. "Oops," he drawled, his voice laced with mock apology, but the laughter from his sycophantic guests, two venture capitalists and a model half his age, betrayed the intent. It wasn't an accident. He'd knocked my glass from my hand mid-toast, right after I'd raised it to celebrate what I thought was our family's unbreakable bond. The shards crunched under his loafers as he stepped closer, his breath reeking of aged scotch and entitlement. "Come on, Alex, don't look so shocked. You're used to scraps, aren't you? That's why you're here, begging for a handout on my jet." The words hit like a gut punch, the cabin's hum of twin engines suddenly deafening in the silence that followed. I stood there, fists clenched at my sides, the sticky residue of champagne dripping down my shirt, soaking into the fabric like the humiliation seeping into my soul. My face burned not just from the spill, but from the eyes on me, pitying from the model, smirking from the suits. Richard, my mother's brother, the man who'd practically raised me after my parents' car crash when I was 12, now reducing me to a punchline at 35,000 feet. I'd flown halfway across the country for this family retreat, believing his invitation was an olive branch after years of strained silence. But this was a blade to the back. I wiped my hand on my pants, forcing a laugh that tasted like bile. "Uncle Rich, what the hell?" That was vintage Dom waste of good bubbly. Inside, my mind reeled, denial crashing against the raw truth I'd ignored for too long. He'd promised to invest in my startup, a tech firm scraping by on fumes. "Family helps family," he'd said over the phone last month, his voice warm like the father figure he'd pretended to be. But now, in this flying palace of polished walnut and ambient lighting, the mask was off. He leaned in, his whisper for my ears only. "You really thought I'd bankroll your little pipe dream? After what your father did to our family fortune? No, kid. This is payback. Enjoy the view while it lasts." The betrayal ignited something primal in me. Anger, hot and uncoiling like a serpent in my chest. My father. The man who'd died broke because Richard had swindled him out of their joint business decades ago. I'd pieced it together over the years from old letters and hushed aunts' whispers, but I'd buried it, hoping blood meant more than grudges. Now, as the jet banked slightly over the Rockies, sunlight glinting off snow-capped peaks below, I felt the weight of that history crush me. Heartbreak mingled with resentment. This wasn't just about money. It was about the years I'd idolized him, the Christmases where he'd played Santa, the college tuition he'd gifted, only to lord it over me later. Obsession flickered to life. How many times had I defended him to friends, calling his arrogance drive? The model, Lana or something forgettable, shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her manicured nails tapping the armrest. "Richard, that was mean," she cooed, but her eyes darted to me with a mix of curiosity and disdain, like I was a sideshow. The capitalists chuckled, one murmuring, "Tough love, eh?" Richard waved them off, pouring himself another drink from the crystal decanter. "Alex here thinks he's entitled to the family silver. But let's be real, your dad gambled it away and you're just the echo. Sit down, enjoy the flight. We'll drop you in Denver like the baggage you are." I sank into my seat, the leather cool against my heated skin, but inside fury boiled. My thoughts fractured. Part of me wanted to lunge, to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until his smug grin faded. Another part whispered doubt. Maybe I deserved this. Hadn't I leaned on him too much? The startup was my escape from a dead-end engineering job. But was it really viable? Guilt crept in, cold and insidious. I'd ignored the red flags, the way he'd dodged specifics about the investment. Fantasies swirled, pushing him out the emergency exit, watching him plummet like Icarus. But no, that was too messy, too immediate. Revenge needed to be surgical, a slow poison. As the flight dragged on, the cabin filled with their banal chatter. Stock tips, yacht parties, I stared out the window, the vast blue sky mocking my isolation. The air smelled of leather polish and Richard's cologne, a cloying mix that turned my stomach. Subtle hints of my plan began to form, born from the resentment festering like an open wound. I wasn't just some failed entrepreneur. I had secrets, layers Richard never bothered to uncover. My engineering job was a covered top-secret clearance at Nellis Air Force Base, where I tested experimental aircraft. F-22 Raptors were my playground, stealth fighters that could dance through the skies unseen. He'd humiliated me in his domain. I'd return the favor in mine. But doubt gnawed. Was this obsession worth it? Moral conflict twisted in my gut. Family was sacred, or so I'd believed. Yet as Richard regaled his guests with tales of his latest acquisition, glancing at me with that triumphant sneer, resolve hardened. Cold, unyielding. I'd play the wounded nephew for now, bide my time. The jet's descent into turbulence mirrored my inner storm, the cabin lights flickering as we hit pockets of rough air. "Buckle up, folks," the pilot announced over the intercom, his voice steady. I smiled inwardly. Pilots, my kin. Richard gripped his armrest, a flash of fear in his eyes. But let him taste vulnerability. By the time we landed in Aspen, not Denver, another lie to isolate me, the humiliation had crystallized into purpose. Richard clapped me on the back at the private terminal, his grip bruising. "Chin up, Alex. Life's a bitch, but you're family. Call me when you grow up." His laugh echoed as he strode to his waiting limo, guests in tow. I stood alone on the tarmac, wind whipping snow flurries around me, the cold biting through my damp shirt. Heartbreak gave way to obsession. I'd make him regret every word. Back at the hotel he'd generously booked, a dingy motel on the outskirts, I paced the threadbare carpet, the room's musty scent fueling my rage. Phone in hand, I hesitated, thumb hovering over my contact at the base. Colonel Hargrove, my mentor. One call and the pieces could fall. That night, sleep evaded me, the cheap mattress sagging under my weight. Inner thoughts raced. What if this backfired? Guilt over betraying family clashed with the raw wound of his words. But resentment won. Visions of his face paling as jets screamed overhead. Planning began in whispers to myself, mapping the flight path back. He'd invited me on the return leg tomorrow, a chance to talk business. Perfect. I'd feign reconciliation, then strike. Fear prickled, escalating to military involvement. Morally gray, yes, but poetic. He'd flown high on betrayal. I'd bring the thunder. Morning dawned crisp, the mountains etched against a steel-gray sky. I boarded the jet again, Richard's greeting oily. "Sleep well, nephew." Ready to apologize. I nodded, swallowing rage, my smile a mask. As we taxied, I excused myself to the lavatory, heart pounding. The mirror reflected a man transformed. Eyes hardened, jaw set. I texted Hargrove. "Need a favor. Intercept demo on private flight. Coordinates incoming." His reply. "You sure? This is off books." My fingers flew. "Personal. Oh you." The jet lifted off and suspense coiled tight. Subtle hints emerged. My casual glance at the radar screen in the cockpit, the pilot's nod when I mentioned my hobby flying. Richard droned on about deals, oblivious. Tension built, quiet and electric like the hum before a storm. The Gulf Stream sliced through the clouds, engines a steady roar that did little to drown the cacophony in my mind. Richard lounged across from me, swirling his scotch. His guests from yesterday replaced by a new entourage. A lawyer and a business partner, both nodding like bobbleheads to his every boast. "See, Alex, this is how empires are built," he said, gesturing to the opulent cabin. "Not with handouts, but hustle. Your dad never got that. Squandered it all on bad bets." The words stung anew, reopening the wound, but I held my tongue, my face a placid mask. Inside, anger simmered, layered with guilt. Was I stooping to his level? Doubt flickered. Calling in F-22s for a personal vendetta? Skirted protocol risked my career. But obsession gripped tighter. He'd humiliated me, betrayed the only family tie I had left. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. I sipped water, staying sharp, while sensory details anchored me. The faint vibration of the fuselage, the metallic tang of recycled air, the way sunlight pierced the windows like spotlights on a stage. Cinematic in its irony. This flying coffin of luxury where my uncle's world would unravel. "Tell me more about the investment," I prompted, voice even, drawing him out. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing with suspicion, then relaxed into his arrogance. "Investment? Kid, that was a test. You failed. But hey, stick around, I might throw you a bone. Janitorial in one of my buildings." The lawyer chuckled, a dry, sycophantic bark. Lana, or was it Lila? From yesterday wasn't here. Perhaps she'd sensed the rot. Suspense built slowly, a slow-burn fuse. I checked my watch subtly, calculating our position over Nevada. Hargrove's confirmation text buzzed in my pocket. "Birds inbound. TA 10 minutes. Make it look routine." My heart raced, palms slick. Inner conflict raged. Fear of consequences, moral qualms about abusing power. What if Richard connected the dots? Guilt over dragging the military into family drama. But resentment overrode. Flashbacks to childhood. Him promising the world while siphoning my inheritance. Cold resolve settled. This was justice, delayed but delivered. Dialogue sharpened the tension. "Uncle, why now? After all these years?" Asked, probing for cracks. He shrugged, but his grip on the glass tightened, knuckles whitening. "Timing's everything. Your startup. Amateur hour. But family secrets. Well, let's say your dad's accident wasn't just bad luck." The words hung, a revelation dripping with malice. My blood ran cold. Had he implied foul play? Heartbreak surged. My parents' crash, the one that left me orphaned, now tainted by his smirk. "What do you mean?" I pressed, voice low, suppressed rage bubbling. He waved it off. "Figure of speech. Or is it? Dig too deep, and you might not like the dirt." The cabin grew oppressive, the air thick with unspoken threats. I excused myself again, stepping to the rear, where the hum was louder. Through the window, the desert sprawled below. Barren, unforgiving like my emerging plan. Subtle foreshadowing in my mind. The raptors, ghosts in the sky, would appear as if summoned by fate. Back in my seat, Richard's partner droned about mergers, but I tuned out, fantasies vivid. His face draining of color as afterburners lit the horizon. Then the first sign. A faint crackle over the intercom. The pilot's voice tense. "Folks, we've got company. 2 unidentified aircraft approaching fast." Richard straightened, brow furrowing. "What? Pirates at 40,000 feet?" Laughter nervous now. I feigned concern, but inside, exhilaration sparked. Obsession nearing fruition. The jet banked slightly, and there they were. Twin specks resolving into sleek, angular forms. F-22 Raptors, matte gray against the blue, closing in with predatory grace. The sound hit next, a distant thunder, growing to a roar that rattled the cabin. Panic rippled. The lawyer gripped his seat, face ashen. "Are we being intercepted?" Richard shot me a glance, confusion etching his features. "Alex, you know planes, what's this?" I met his eyes, my voice steady, laced with cold resolve. "Looks like Air Force. Routine check, maybe." But the lie hung heavy. This was my doing. Hargrove's pilots radioed the cockpit, audible now. "Gulfstream 9er Foxtrot, this is Viper 1. Escort protocol engaged. Maintain course." The pilot relayed, voice cracking. "They say they're here for a passenger. Alex Thorne." The twist landed like a bombshell. Richard's eyes widened, betrayal mirroring my own from yesterday. "What the you?" The Raptors pulled alongside, wingtips mere yards away, their cockpits tinted, but I knew the pilots, friends from the program. Afterburners flared briefly, a show of force that shook the jet. Sensory overload. The boom echoing through the hull, the acrid scent of fear sweat in the air, the way shadows danced as the fighters maneuvered. "Explain yourself," Richard demanded, voice rising to a shout. His empire crumbling in mid-air. I stood, the cabin tilting in turbulence, my confession deliberate, building suspense to its peak. "You humiliated me, uncle. Betrayed me like you did my father. But you forgot, I fly higher than you ever could. These are my birds. My world." His face contorted, shock, fury, then dawning horror. "You little shit. This is treason." But the lawyer interjected, pale. "Sir, they're locking on. We comply or—" The implication hung. Missiles, though it was bluff. My moral conflict peaked. Guilt at the terror in their eyes, but satisfaction drowned it. Poetic justice. Him, the king of the skies in his jet, dethroned by real power. The raptors escorted us down, forcing a diversion to Nellis. Richard ranted, threats spilling. "I'll ruin you. Lawsuits, exposure." But his voice cracked, revealing the hollow man beneath. As we landed, MPs waiting on the tarmac, I turned to him one last time. "Family helps family, right? Consider this my investment. In truth." The twist deepened. Hargrove met us, revealing archived files, proof of Richard's embezzlement, the crash rigged for insurance. Not just revenge, closure. Richard's arrest followed, his empire fracturing. In the aftermath, as I watched his limo replaced by a squad car, resentment faded to hollow resolve. The payoff was bittersweet. Justice, but at what cost? My career teetered, guilt lingering like exhaust fumes. Yet in that moment, with the raptors thundering overhead in salute, I felt whole. Betrayal avenged, but the scars remained, a reminder that revenge, like flight, demands a heavy toll.